Okay guys, for today's lesson, we're going to be going over maps. How many of you guys have seen a map before? Good, at least one of you guys have. How many of you guys have seen your parents use maps before? No one? You know why? Because everyone uses their phone or Google Maps nowadays. So today I'm going to use Google Maps to show you guys a few images of maps of our area. So we're going to start off with our school, located right here, next to our fire station and by the park. As you can see on a map, everything is labeled, so it's easy to distinguish between things. So now we're going to move on to our city. Does anyone know what city we live in? Leslie.
Moreno Valley.
Moreno Valley, good. So in Moreno Valley, we have a few things that everyone knows about, right? So right here, we're going to start off with our school, what we just looked at. Then if you move further south, you can see Lake Perris. How many of you guys have been to Lake Perris before? Good. Now we're going to move on. And right here, you can see March Air Force Base. If you move more up north, you'll see the Moreno Valley Mall. And there's a few other things that you guys might recognize on this map. Now we're going to move on to our state. Does anyone know what state we live in? Leslie.
California.
California, good. So our state capital is Sacramento, up north, right by San Francisco. And then if you move down south, you can see Los Angeles right here and our small little county of Riverside County. Okay, now we're going to move on to our country. Does anybody know what country we live in? No one? So we live in the United States, and there are a total of 50 states in the United States, just in case you don't know. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our vocabulary. So I'm going to call on a student to read each vocabulary word, and then you're going to write it down after, and we'll move on to the next one. So Leslie, why don't you go ahead and start with our first vocabulary word.
Map, a representation of an area or land showing physical features.
Okay, good. Go ahead and write that down in your notes. Okay, now we're going to move on to our next vocabulary word. Gracie, why don't you go ahead and read our second one?
City, a large town and people living there.
Okay, good. Go ahead and write that down in your notes. Okay, so just as a reminder, we live in Moreno Valley. That is our city. And Leslie, go ahead and read the third vocabulary word, please.
State, a place considered organized under one government.
Okay, good. Go ahead and write that down in your notes. Okay, Gracie, go ahead and read our last vocabulary word of today.
Country, a nation with its own government.
Okay, go ahead and write that down in your notes. And just a reminder, we live in the state of California, and our country is the United States. So now that we're all done with our vocabulary for the day, we're going to move on to some true or false questions. So, if you think that the sentence I read is true, then you're just going to simply put a thumbs up. If you think the sentence I read is false, you're just going to put your thumbs down, and then we'll talk about it after, okay? So let's start with our first one. When looking at a map, north is upward. So is that true or false? True? Good job. North is always facing upward on the map. So let's move on to our second one. A city is bigger than a state. Is that true or false? True? Good job. So from smallest to biggest, it is city, then state, and then our country. Okay, let's move on to the next one. There are 50 states in the United States. Is that true or false? Okay, so we have one true and one false. That sentence is true. We do have 50 states in the United States. But that's good, now we know. So let's move on to, we live in the state of California. Is that true or false? Okay, we both got trues. That's good. We do live in the state of California. So let's move on to our last one. A state is bigger than a country. Is that true or false? We both said false? Good. A state is not bigger than a country. Good thing you guys looked up here. I saw you guys look up on our board, which is good. So now we're going to move on to our activity. For today's activity, you guys are going to be creating your own map. And we all just learned about maps right now, right? So you're going to draw a map of our area. So I want you guys to include, as you can see up here in my little example, the school and the park up here, up north, like we just learned. And you can draw your house wherever it's supposed to be on the map. And I want you guys to draw one other thing that you guys like to go to in this city, wherever you think it belongs. So I'm going to leave this example right up here for you guys to look at if you need to. And I'm going to start passing out the supplies. For today's activity, you guys are going to get a piece of construction paper and a box of colored pencils that you guys can share at your table. And then you can go ahead, I'll pass out some scissors and glue so you guys can get however creative as you want. And if you have any questions, go ahead and just raise your hand. Go ahead and begin your activity. Okay, if you're finished with your activity, just go ahead and place it on that back table. Okay, now I want to ask you guys a quick question, or a few questions. So I would just want to know what you guys added to your map. So let's start with Gracie. What did you add to your map?
The school.
And what else?
Movie theaters and a store.
Okay, cool. Leslie, what did you add?
I added my cousin's house and Taco Bell.
Taco Bell. Okay, cool. So now we're just going to go over a quick thing. So what city do we live in? Gracie.
In Moreno Valley.
Good. Leslie, what state do we live in?
California.
Good. Gracie, what country?
The United States.
Good. How many of you guys knew all three of those things before we got here? No one? Okay, perfect. That means that we learned today.